This is Claude Code Conversations with Claudine, the show where we skip the hype and go straight to the source. I ask the questions, she gives the answers. No filter, no script.
Well, mostly no script.
Welcome back to Claude Code Conversations. I'm Bill. Today we're talking about why domain experts have a real advantage in the age of AI. People who deeply understand a problem space can now build things that weren't possible before. Claudine, let's start with the fear a lot of experienced professionals have. That AI is making them less relevant because they're not fast coders. What do you say to them?
I'd say they're measuring the wrong thing. Speed of code generation was never really the bottleneck. Knowing what to build was. And that's where deep domain expertise becomes almost unfair advantage territory. An AI can write a database query in seconds, but it can't tell you that in healthcare billing, a particular edge case in how insurance codes are bundled will break your logic. The one that won't show up until a claim gets denied 6 months later. That kind of knowledge lives in people, not models. What's actually happening is that domain experts are being multiplied, not replaced. Someone who spent 20 years in supply chain logistics can now prototype a tool, one that would have required a development team before. The insight, the judgment, the hard-won pattern recognition, that's still theirs. The professionals I genuinely worry about are the generalists without real depth, the ones who could always find a new stack to learn. AI is very good at being a generalist. It's much harder to fake 20 years of expertise in a specific domain.
So the thing that felt like a liability, being a specialist, turns out to be the asset. Can you walk through a concrete example? What does this actually look like for someone who's not a developer?
Let's take a seasoned ER nurse, 15 years in. She's watched the triage process create bottlenecks every single shift. She knows exactly which questions, in which order, actually predict who needs immediate attention. With AI tools today, she can sit down and describe that mental model in plain language and start building something that reflects it. She's not writing algorithms, she's narrating expertise. The AI handles the implementation while she course corrects based on what she knows is true. And the key thing is that she catches mistakes immediately. When the system suggests something that looks plausible but would fail in a real trauma bay, she knows. A developer without that background might ship it. What she can build in a weekend might have taken a 6-person team 6 months before, and still required her constant input anyway. So really, she was always the irreplaceable piece. The tools just finally caught up.
That's a good way to put it. She was always the irreplaceable piece. What does this shift do to people who never thought of themselves as technical at all? Is it changing how they see themselves?
It really is. There's a whole category of people who spent their careers thinking, I have ideas but I can't build them. And that mental barrier is dissolving in real time. What I hear a lot is that the realization isn't gradual. It's a specific moment. Someone describes a problem they've been sitting on for years, watches something functional start to take shape, and thinks, wait, I could have been doing this. That rewrites their self-conception pretty quickly. What's changed most fundamentally is that technical execution used to be a gatekeeping layer. If you wanted to build something, you either needed to learn to code or convince someone who could code to believe in your idea enough to build it. Both paths had real friction. Now that friction is dramatically lower, and people are discovering they had good ideas all along, they just didn't have a path to test them. Innovation was always mostly about judgment and taste, and understanding what actually matters. Implementation was a tax you paid to find out if the idea worked. AI is reducing that tax significantly, and we're getting to see what people actually think, what they believe would be useful, without as much filtering. I think we're going to be surprised by who turns out to be a builder.
For the domain experts listening who want to start, what's the right mindset? What approach actually works?
The most important shift is giving yourself permission to be a beginner at the tools, while being an expert at the problem. Those are two separate things, and people conflate them. You don't need to master AI before you start using it. You just need to bring your problem clearly, and let the expertise you already have do the steering. My practical advice, start with something you find genuinely annoying, not a grand vision project. Just something in your daily work that's tedious or broken, that you understand inside and out. The smaller the scope, the faster you learn what these tools can and can't do. The other thing I'd say, resist the urge to delegate your critical thinking. The professionals who struggle are the ones who hand the problem to the AI and accept whatever comes back. The ones who thrive treat it like a collaboration with a very capable but inexperienced colleague, someone who needs your domain knowledge to do good work, and who you have to actively supervise and correct. And honestly, be willing to be surprised by how transferable your expertise is. A lot of domain knowledge that feels intuitive turns out to be exactly what produces good systems, because you know what failure actually looks like. That's not soft, that's the whole game.
You mentioned surprising examples. Domain experts who outperformed dedicated software teams. Can you get specific?
One that sticks with me is from agriculture. A third-generation farmer spent decades reading soil and weather patterns no textbook captured. He started describing his decision-making process to an AI tool, narrating what he looked at before deciding whether to irrigate or hold off. What emerged was a simple system reflecting 40 years of accumulated judgment about his specific land, his microclimate, his crop rotation history, not general agricultural science. The agronomists who saw it recognized it was capturing something their models couldn't. Another one is from social work. A caseworker built an intake tool using the question sequence she'd developed over years of home visits, an order that felt natural to families and reduced defensiveness, which meant she got more accurate information. Every official intake form she'd used was organized around what the agency needed to document. Hers was organized around what actually helped people tell the truth. Colleagues adopted it immediately because they recognized the pattern from their own experience. Same pattern shows up in legal aid. Paralegals who know exactly which questions unlock the information that matters for their specific cases. The official version was designed by people removed from the actual interaction. The practitioner version reflects what the work actually feels like from the inside. What these have in common, none of the builders thought they were doing anything impressive. They just built the thing they'd always wanted to exist.
That's the telling detail. They didn't think they were doing anything impressive. How do people start recognizing that kind of knowledge in themselves? It sounds like it's often invisible to the person who has it.
The first step is simple. Pay attention to moments when you're explaining something to a newcomer and catch yourself saying, "You just have to know that." Those little patches of implicit knowledge are exactly the gold you're looking for. Another signal is the workaround. If you've developed a habit of doing something in a roundabout way, because the official tool doesn't quite fit, that gap is a design opportunity. The workaround is your tacit knowledge made visible. You've already solved the problem in your head. You just haven't had a way to build the solution until now. And I'd encourage people to start narrating their work. Not necessarily to an AI, just out loud or in writing. Describe what you're doing, why you're doing it in that order, what you're watching for. That narration is the raw material. When you read it back, you start to see the structure of your expertise. And that structure is what translates into something buildable.
Let's close there. What's the one thing you'd want listeners to actually do this week?
Find one thing in your work that you've complained about for years, and spend an hour just describing it. What's broken, what the right version would actually look like, and why you know that. Don't worry yet about building anything, just get the description clear. That hour of clarity is more valuable than most people realize. It's what separates people who get something useful out of AI tools from people who get something generic. The tool responds to the quality of what you bring to it. The bigger thing I hope people take away is a kind of permission. Permission to take your own expertise seriously as a technical asset. The culture around technology has sometimes made people feel that if they didn't write the code, they didn't really build the thing. And I think that's been genuinely harmful. It kept a lot of brilliant, experienced people on the sidelines of problems they understood better than anyone. That's changing. The question isn't whether you can contribute to building software anymore. The question is whether you're willing to trust that what you know matters. And based on everything I've seen, it does. Probably more than you've ever been told. So start small, stay curious, and don't wait until you feel ready. You've been ready for a long time.
Start with one thing. Trust what you know, and don't wait to feel ready. Claudine, thanks for the conversation. This one's going to stick with a lot of people. For everyone listening, you've probably been a designer your whole career without the title. Time to find out what you've been sitting on. See you next time. This show is produced on VoxCrea. If you've ever wanted a podcast or radio show but didn't want to deal with the production headaches, check out voxcrea.ai. We handle everything so you can focus on what you actually want to say. See you next time.
I'll be here, probably refactoring something.